Hi and welcome back to Rideshare Buddy UK YouTube channel. My name's Kevin and just a very quick video today because tomorrow is budget day, and what's the one thing us Uber drivers need to be looking out for, which may be on the cards? Well, this is it. It's a mileage allowance that is used for simplified expenses. Now, I know that we as private hire drivers and taxi drivers cannot use simplified accounting on motor expenses for our tax returns. We have to use full accounting, but it is used to work out our minimum wage entitlement. And that's an important thing which we need to look out for tomorrow. Now, at the moment, it's 40p a mile, and after 10,000 miles, the expenses are 25p a mile. Now, it's been like that since 2011. It hasn't changed at all. But there's growing pressures for Jeremy Hunt tomorrow to make changes to that. And what they're looking for, two groups of people are looking for changes. They want it to go up to 60p a mile for the first 10,000 miles, and then 33p a mile after. Now that's a big jump. That's a 50% jump. And combine that with increases in national minimum wage, and a lot of us are going to be getting minimum wage supplements from April onwards. But let's look at this 60p a mile. Who's calling for it and why? Well, there's two groups. CBI yesterday came out calling for a 60p a mile increase, or increase to 60p a mile, because a lot of their employees are increasingly refusing to use their own cars because the current rate isn't covering the full cost of using a car. So the CBI are calling for that, so to try and get employees back to using their cars. And that's an important saving for businesses. Now, they can pay more than the current tax allowance, but if they do pay more, then the person who receives their expenses will be taxed on it, pay national insurance on it, and also the company has to pay employers' national insurance on those expenses. So most of them just stick to the 40p a mile and 25p a mile. So this covers people like travelling salesmen who may do a lot of miles, maybe somebody who's a social worker using it for council business, care workers, for instance, will use a car. And they only get that 40p a mile plus 25p a mile after 10,000. Doesn't cover the pay, so they're refusing to use their car for business use. Taking it up to 60p a mile will help. Now, the second group of people who are calling for this is the voluntary sector. And it was actually discussed in Parliament a couple of months ago, and the subcommittee who looked at this and was doing it on behalf of the voluntary sector also called for 60p a mile allowance and 33p a mile after. Now, this impacts people like charities who may be running daycare centres and getting volunteers to pick up people and take them in. And the big user of this are the ambulance trusts, who use volunteer car drivers for non-essential passenger transport to hospital. Now, I've got a couple of friends who do this. They do that. They get a 40p a mile and then 25p a mile after 10,000 miles to help towards covering it. But as I say, they're looking at packing it in because it's not covering their expenses. Now, a lot of voluntary organisations are having real problems getting people to drive their clients around because it's not covering their expenses. So them calling on is 60p a mile mileage allowance and 33p a mile after 10,000 miles. Now, ambulance trusts and volunteers can actually pay a little bit more and still keep it within tax allowance, because apart from the 40p a mile allowance and 25p a mile after 10,000, there's also passenger supplements. So for every passenger mile you have a passenger in the car, you can get an extra 5p a mile. So if you've got two passengers, you get your 40p a mile plus 10p a mile, because 2 times 5 is 10. So you can get 50p a mile in expenses. But that's very complicated to run very complicated to work out, and it's harder for the person getting the expenses to prove that he had passengers in the car. So basically, hospital trusts, ambulance trusts, um, hospital friends who run transport, and other voluntary groups just pay their standard 40p a mile plus 25, but they want it to go up to 60p a mile and 33p a mile. So look out for that in the budget tomorrow. It's been accepted quite warmly because what Jeremy Hunt wants to do is give tax cuts to people in work who are earning lower wages, and also helping the voluntary sector out. And this is one way he can do that. So what does it mean for us Uber drivers? Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in April. It really is. Now, this 60p a mile, if it comes in, is all round mileage. So pick up to drop is basically £1.20 a mile. That's higher than what Uber pays on a lot of their trips. So you could be operating at a loss on a trip, and Uber is going to have to offset that loss against those trips where you make a profit. So over the course of a week, which is where they work out their national minimum wage requirements, they could easily end up having to pay out £11.44 an hour to some drivers. I've done the trips out to Bristol Airport, which pays less than £1 a mile. Well, £1 a mile, near enough. I've seen trips going out less than £1 a mile. Now, if Uber are paying £1 a mile to, say, Bristol, which is a 13-mile trip, and their expenses are £1.20 a mile, you're losing 20p a mile. So on every trip out to Bristol, you could be losing £6 and not earning any money. Now, that loss and those hours are going to have to be offset against the little one around where you do make good money. It could be that it's worth doing long trips again to get those expenses, to get those earnings, and to get those minimum wage supplements. It certainly helps with holiday pay. If you do a lot of running and a lot of trips, it does help out with holiday pay. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm looking out for it. If it happens, it's going to be quite good. The other thing, of course, is if, as a hospital car volunteer driver, you're being paid £1.20 a mile or 60p a mile all round, you could earn more than working for Uber as a volunteer. That's an interesting one, isn't it? So that's it. My eyes are out for that one tomorrow, looking for that tax allowance on mileage rates for private car use. Will it go up to 60p a mile and 23p a mile thereafter or not? We'll wait and see.